It's a bit of a reality check, and that most problems in Ukraine are complicated because they're complicated.
What opportunities are here?
You can't bring 7,000 people together in Ukraine without the risk of them being blown up.
And you see things are being rebuilt and refurbished and growing, which I don't think a lot of people realize is actually still happening in Ukraine.
We're innovating, we're creating new stuff, not just drones. There's a lot more going on.
Roman Washuk, Business-Ombudsman of Ukraine, and former Canadian ambassador to Ukraine veteran diplomat with 30-plus years of service across Europe, co-organizer of the 2019 Ukraine Reform Conference, fluent in 7 languages, recipient of Canada's 125th Anniversary Medal and Ukraine's Order of Merit 3rd class.
Hello, I'm Natalka Simok, and we're here off the record, and I have the pleasure to introduce you today's guest, a respected colleague and a good friend, Roman Washuk. Many of you know him, but I'll say a little bit about him. So I am the current Canadian ambassador. He was the ambassador from 2014 to 2019, very well known in Ukraine. And I think both of us have a lot of things in common, but one of them is our return to Ukraine for different reasons. So it's a little bit like that episode of The Cat Came Back, which is a National Film Board movie, which I'm going to figure out how do we link it to here so that people understand what I'm talking about. But you're here now on a different capacity, and we'll speak mostly for that reason on some of the issues there, but as the business ombudsman. So welcome, and yes, please introduce yourself.
Thanks. Well, yeah. So I was basically a trial version of Natalka, but having done that, then with my exquisite sense of timing, took up the job of business ombudsman in January of 2022. So things were a bit tumultuous in the first year.
Yes.
But rather like Ukraine, we've stabilized our operations and we keep doing what we do, which is to protect the rights of individual businesses, but also to generally assess on the basis of our casework what the issues are and propose systemic changes. So don't just try to treat the symptoms, but what are the underlying pathologies.
It's a new position. You're the first person in the role? Is that correct?
I'm the third person in the role.
Third person in the role. Okay.
So the first guy was started in 2014-15. Algirdas Šemeta, former Lithuanian European Commissioner, statistician. So we're very strong on numbers. That wouldn't have necessarily happened with me. I'm a history major, so it's partly enumerate, but very strong team that corrects those weaknesses of mine. And he was followed by Marcin Święcicki, former Polish minister, former mayor of Warsaw, and then me, starting in 22. So we have a history of about 10 years to look back on, and a track record of practically doing stuff for Ukrainian business, and that includes Ukrainian-owned and foreign-owned business. The important thing is you have to have a business in Ukraine. We have got back in terms of getting fines canceled and various reassessments canceled, 28.7 billion hryvnia, which used to be a lot more dollars, but it's still an impressive amount.
Yeah, and I think it's a tough time right now working in that area. We just saw in Kyiv some protest related to sort of reform processes and overturning legislation and going back to the original. And reform has been a topic or a very serious issue that Ukraine has taken on since when you were ambassador. So in 2015, the G7 leaders had mandated the G7 ambassadors here to look at reform. So your history actually is very relevant because you've been looking at reform from all these perspectives, including judicial reform, rule of law. So it must have been an interesting transition over to this role.
I would describe it as kind of going from looking through a telescope into the big globular cosmic world of G7 ambassadors to flipping the optics and going to a microscope. So reading through a case about the value-added tax returns of the owner of a kiosk in Sumy. Now, what it does is, in a way, it grounds you. It's a bit of a reality check. It has encouraged me to rethink some of the things I used to think in my globulating days. Now, I'd already started that process a bit earlier in some talks I did. But it also it makes you understand that things aren't necessarily as cut and dry, black and white as advocacy groups or the government might suggest, and that most problems in Ukraine are complicated because they're complicated. They're naturally complicated, not because of necessarily simply ill will or the big C word, corruption, which is the universal Ukrainian description for everything. Things also partly are there because of incompetence, also overzealousness on the part of officials. And that if you sort of pull on just one string, things can start unraveling, but you have to kind of knit them back together, looking at more than just one problem or one institution.
I'm glad you raised that because I think you described it well. There seems to be this dark cloud over Ukraine that everything is related to corruption. And as you, I think, described it very nicely, it's not that simple. It's actually a lot of the reforms are about simplifying, streamlining, addressing some of the issues that businesses from around the world have. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do then in terms of business-ombudsman, and who's your typical client? What's a typical case?
Okay. We have a very wide range of clients. So literally from one-person entrepreneurs with a kiosk to big transnational corporations. So we operate for free, thanks to funding from the European Union and 12 other countries through a multi-donor account. Note, not including Canada. Hint, hint. Yet. And we're basically, kind of a public interest law firm. 20 lawyers who do case investigations. Another team of 5 that does policy and recovery stuff, plus an admin team that helps us all keep the show on the road. And so what happens? We have a website, boi.org.ua. If you like numbers and reports, it's all there in real time. So in fact, our case management system is connected directly to our website. So as soon as a case status changes, it changes on our website. In that sense, we're one of the most digitized business support offices around.
Do people look you up a lot? Do a lot of people look up the website?
32,000 unique visitors in the past year. So yeah.
Okay.
So what happens is, let's say you've tried to put up a new sign on your kiosk, and this is like the super low end of things, and the town authorities don't allow you to. You apply for the new sign, and you never get a response from the municipal authorities. You go to our website, you click on the complain button, which is on every page of our site. There's a simple Google form you fill out to explain to us what the problem is. Within a couple of days, you get a call back from one of our investigators, and they then will tell you either whether your complaint falls within our mandate. So, for example, if you had already written a letter and complained to the city, yes. If you've already taken it to court, no, because we can't second guess the courts. And then if you're within the mandate, we'll sit down with you and work out administrative legal argument to back your case and join you in the appeals process, either with the town or with some other entity. That's at one end. The other end is, for example, transfer pricing disputes between multinational corporations and the Ukrainian State Tax Service. which can involve going through, many volumes, hundreds of pages of very abstruse tax determinations, drawing on legal opinions from everything from the European Court of Human Rights, and then on to Ukrainian Supreme Court decisions, changes in law, changes in regulation, and again, helping the company formulate a case for appeal, let's say, to the central agencies of the state tax service here.
Taxes seems to be like a big topic, I imagine.
Nearly two-thirds.
Two-thirds, wow.
Which is, you could say, is this because the Ukrainian tax system is uniquely evil? Probably not. It's simply that taxes generate hundreds of thousands of interactions between business and government per year. So you would expect that that would be where a lot of cases would come from. In Canada, for example, there is a separate tax ombudsman attached to the Canadian Revenue Agency. There isn't one in Ukraine, so we kind of fulfill part of that role for business. So to apply to us, you've got to be incorporated as some sort of business. You can be like one person FOP entrepreneur, but you can't just be an ordinary person off the street who is unhappy with the quality of a government service or the quality of a chocolate bar they bought or something. That's not a case for us.
Do you have a lot of international businesses reaching out to you?
About 15% of the total. So we've helped companies that are building new plants, operating plants in Ukraine. And now these companies have lawyers and accountants of their own. But our comparative advantage is that we have a huge amount of experience in administrative law. So tax law, administrative law. These are niche-y sort of subjects. And so even fairly high-powered companies can still benefit from the experience and expertise we have.
So you were just in Rome, speaking of exciting, and I heard that it was just packed, if it was not the biggest Ukraine recovery conference so far. And I'm curious to know, when you show up to the conference, now everybody knows what you do, who you are. Do you get a lot of questions there? Has it changed? What do foreign ministers, what do finance ministers want to ask you? I'm just curious to know. Does that come up at these
They're
conferences?
busy talking to each other. They're not asking me.
Okay.
But business people, especially, I spend a lot of time in the business fair on the ground floor.
Yes.
And familiar faces, in some cases, people we've helped in the past. In fact, I bumped into General Keith Kellogg, or Kellogg the cat, as he was then mistranslated here in Ukraine, in some cases by AI. But General Kellogg, right in front of the stand of Rehau Windows, which is a sort of a high-end window company whom we'd helped. And so I explained on the basis of their case what it is we do.
Yes.
So Rome was, a huge bun toss, or maybe a crostini toss. And there are a lot of skeptics who will say, like, what? Ukraine is bleeding out, the situation is tragic, and then 7,000 of you get together and schmooze in Rome. But I still see it as useful. It is a kind of huge one-stop shop for anyone and anyone dealing with issues around Ukraine. You have access to people you don't ordinarily see. I moderated a panel on rule of law. So the two justice ministers, Olha Stefanishna at the time, that's now changed, and a bunch of international organization reps. And then just hallway interactions. If there's one thing the Italians are good at, it's catering. And they catered to our needs, including like the business fair had a kind of piazza in the middle where anyone who you encountered at a stand, you could just go off and have coffee with them.
Yeah. Okay. So just a little break. I need to know, what was the favorite food there? Your favorite food?
My favorite food there would have been, I think they had gnocchi. That was good.
Okay.
I'm a big gnocchi fan. But as I say, the coffee piazza in the middle of the business fair was
brilliant.
It was actually, it made it
Yes.
the most successful format compared to all the previous URCs from a business point of view.
So I've heard that. I was going to ask that question actually, because it's criticized that, you spend so much money bringing people together at these conferences. Are they useful for the money that you get? So I just want to make sure and clarify. You're saying that it is good value. And what do you feel are the results coming out of those conferences?
Quite a few business announcements. Last year at Berlin, there was the signing of the financing arrangements for the NJJ takeover of LifeCell, Ukraine's third largest mobile operator. And this year, they already own it and run it and are running promotions. I switched mobile operators because of that. This year, for example, I attended the signing of a supply arrangement between Ukrainian company that is building up the first plate glass factory in the country. Ukraine has glass factories. They make bottles and things, but not window glass. And if there's anything this country needs now and will need much more of in future, it's window glass. And so their three main European suppliers of technology were there. They were signing the agreement. So it kind of, Natalka, that visits and events are drivers. They basically force people to crystallize arrangements that would otherwise maybe drag on for months, but it's a kind of a pressure point, meaning you need deliverables, and so it drives people to do that. And also just the fact that people from different walks of life, people from can interact. And again, you can't do that in Ukraine. You can't bring 7,000 people together in Ukraine without the risk of them being blown up. So that's the advantage of holding it somewhere else. Again, you have to watch out that you don't overdo it. There's a certain moral scruples you should hold to. But the more people are personally engaged and touched by the story of Ukraine, both the sad bits and the resilience and the determination, the better.
So I wasn't there, but perhaps, given that we're both Canadian, you could tell us a little bit about who you saw from Canada. I know that there was a delegation from the government. And who else was there?
Who else was there? Canada-Ukraine Foundation was there. And again, I think they managed to meet almost all of their partners and potential partners there. Again, the one-stop shopping aspect. Representatives of the biggest Canadian investors. Fairfax, for example, was there and were part of the discussion on insurance, war insurance.
A big question in Canada. Big question,
and but also one where the Canadian private sector also is actually in the lead. Needs a bit more support from the Canadian government sector.
I understand, but the Canadian insurance company
is the biggest provider domestically here in Ukraine of war risk insurance. So that's it. And so
if you were to ask the Canadian government, because you made a comment about the Canadian government involvement, what would you ask?
I would say back up stuff like this. It seems a bit peculiar that a big Canadian company is backed by America's Development Finance Corporation, but not so far from entities like EDC. Now, I have a 11-year now record of beating my head against the wall on some of these Canadian export support issues, but there you go.
Maybe what would be good examples, European countries that are doing something similar?
Germany for German companies, Belgium for Belgian companies. So,
and is it making a difference? Are there more Belgian companies and are there more German companies because of it?
Yes, because it gives people a sense of security that even if something terrible were to happen, they're financially likely to be made whole. And there is still money to be made. I have dealt with 2 Belgian cases over the past year, both for some reason out of Ternopil. One in high-end electric light and sort of projector manufacturing, and the other in textiles. Bayer, which is the big German pharmaceutical and chemicals company, has doubled the size of its seed production operation here in Ukraine. So those are the kind of things you can get if companies sense that they have full backing. Here I'm going to veer off into my Canadian obsessions here, but I've always felt that Canada has had a kind of firewall between do-gooding and investment promotion, and I've always felt that they should work closer together. That there is a lot of goodwill, and goodwill can be monetized.
And we just last year modernized our Canadian-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. So we have a very good instrument available to Canadian companies and to be able to work freely with Ukraine, Ukrainian firms, I mean, and also just to note that Canadian companies who are here are very happy here and are doing well, from what I understand. Do they come to see you, without giving any names, but do they have challenges that they're raising with you?
There has been one case, which was a challenge with the behavior of a state bank. But otherwise, no, the bigger companies seem happy. Overall, I'd say, the bigger your company, especially if you're a foreign investor, the less likely you are to run into trouble, or maybe the more likely you are to have the in-house capacity to manage or preempt trouble. So our greatest comparative advantage, I mentioned that we do work with multinationals, but it's with small and medium companies. I'd say in Ukraine, if you're a micro enterprise, you're flying below the radar. There's a specific legal regime for micro business, this so-called personal individual entrepreneur, FOP system, which doesn't require a whole lot of reporting, keeps you out of the very complicated value-added tax system. But there's a kind of a glass ceiling. And so the problem is, how do companies grow? So it's pretty easy to be a micro company in Ukraine. But as soon as you become a bigger small company and then a medium company, then your troubles increase because the systems are very onerous, over-engineered sometimes, and therefore you're more likely to run into trouble.
And I saw on social media that your position is being re-advertised.
Yes.
So, or advertised for the next person. What would you tell people who are interested in this position, or who do you think should be considering a position like this? What would be their challenges?
You've got to be, in some respects, a kind of insider-outsider. You've got to know enough about Ukraine, the way things operate here, the people, the way the system runs, to be able to interact with it. But you can't be obviously beholden to any particular stakeholders. And that's partly the reason why the three business ombudsmen so far have in fact been non-Ukrainians, which is a bit unusual in most countries. I think the job is open to Ukrainians as well. I would encourage both Ukrainians who have done well abroad and have a strong international background, but also internationals who have spent a lot of time in Ukraine and have learned the system, the language, et cetera, to give that position some serious consideration. You also have to be ready for incrementalism. Like you can't suddenly transform everything overnight by one tweet. That's reserved for G7 ambassadors.
And so tell us a little bit about the challenges of the position.
The challenges are that we don't have a lot of statutory powers. So it's more reputational. It's more, there is, according to a cabinet decree, an obligation on the part of officials to respond to us. And then we can issue them recommendations, and they can either accept them or they can reject them. But if they reject them, they have to explain why. And then we have the option of going out and naming and shaming. But we can't order people to do things. So you have to be ready to be happy with incremental steps to achieving your goals. You have to learn about complicated things. And you have to deal with a sort of a complicated social psychology. I'll give you an example. Legitimate retail and business associations representing them, AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce, is really upset about the shadow economy and, let's say, shadow supplies of iPhones, case in point. Pretty much 79% of iPhones in Ukraine come in not through legitimate distributors. They appear somehow magically. And so naturally you'd say, okay, well, all you do is you change one or two people at customs and make sure somebody checks the cash register at points of sale and you're done. But actually what's happened is that Ukraine has a disproportionate number of iPhones per inhabitant because they're 25% cheaper than they are in other countries because no customs duties or taxes are paid. Now, do all those millions of people who, on the one hand, are probably using their gray market iPhones to write irate posts saying, I hate corruption, I demand that people struggle against corruption, fire everyone who isn't anti-corruption enough, don't realize that through their own purchases, they are reinforcing these behaviors. And let's say we are now moving towards the appointment of a new chief of the Bureau of Economic Security, and maybe seeing the beginnings of the reboot of the State Customs Service. Well, if those two people and their organizations are successful, that means at this time next year, Ukrainians will be paying 20 to 25% more for their high-end mobile phones. Is everyone ready for that? So what you need is a kind of confidence-building renegotiation of the social contract, saying to people, going legit has short to medium-term costs, but in the long term, in terms of European integration, in terms of just making for a fairer, more transparent society, you'll be more prosperous in the long term. But you have to believe in the long term. In wartime, that can be tough. And you need to be willing to synchronize your personal behavior with your stated beliefs.
So I wanted to end a little bit more on your thoughts on hope. So as we said, we're both cats coming back to Ukraine frequently, and we see the changes, and I see the changes. I was here last time, 2013, 2014, and returned with this position here now. And some of the things that I've noted, which were there before, are now incredibly strong, is the public does not stay silent. They do speak up for themselves and the issues that are important to them in a very nonviolent, organized way, on the most part. And the other thing I've noticed is just the incredible entrepreneur spirit that people have and how they're willing to take risks. They have an idea, they'll turn that into a business plan and model and get investment for it. I find it pretty remarkable. So it's something that I try to talk about to people's, well, my audience would be Canada. Do you see the same thing, or maybe you see something else that you would like to raise?
Well, I also see the other side of the demos, which is no provocative presence of riot police at the demos, despite it being martial law. In fact, who you had was the dialogue police. The dialogue police are a product of police reform. Police reform, I think dialogue police, the lead was the European Union assistance mission, but also the Canadian police mission played into the development of that. So that has worked very well. So you've had both a kind of a maturing of civil society, but then also a maturing and a change in the ability of the state to interact with people who are trying to tell it something. So that is very positive. On the entrepreneurialism, for sure. I've developed quite a close working relationship with Forbes Ukraine, which is the main published source of stuff on stories about Ukrainian entrepreneurs. Their latest issue has a listing called the Next 250, which is Ukrainian startups and SMEs that have potential for growing into something big. We're seeing Ukrainian retail chains, Ukrainian restaurant chains expand into neighboring European countries, Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, and others. So even Spain. So So I think this kind of heightened adrenaline-fueled entrepreneurialism is definitely a big asset for Ukraine and ultimately a big asset for the European Union. So I think Ukraine needs to do more. And I, for example, encouraged the people at Forbes Ukraine to create a parallel English edition so that international business people who trust the brand can also read the stories about what's happening among Ukrainian entrepreneurs and bring that message. And of course, it's hard. On the one hand, you want to tell people it's a war, things are terrible, but a bit counterintuitively, despite things being terrible, we've still got new business formation, we're innovating, we're creating new stuff, not just drones. There's a lot more going on.
A good example is I was at Vinnytsia about a month ago, and Vinnytsia is going to have, they're just completing 6 industry parks.
Yeah.
And there are various themes, various sectors. There's always space for startups, different sizes. Even they always have a youth room that offers youth to come in and test their ideas. It's difficult to express this to Canadians from my side, just in what opportunities are here. It's an exciting place to be. Yep. So if you wanted to test your product, test your ideas. I think there's IT clusters here that Canada a long time ago used to support when I was here before. So where else? Vinnytsia, Ivano-Frankivsk, Lviv.
I think part of what's happened is that what we're seeing is, in part, the deindustrialization of the South and East, which is very much war affected, but then a reindustrialization of the Center and West. And that is partly because of the war. It's also partly because of the European Union factor. So in the same way as Western Poland was growing more rapidly prior to Poland entering the EU, areas like Poznań, Wrocław, the same way Lviv, Lutsk, Ivano-Frankivsk, Vinnytsia are growing now. And again, it's also a generational thing. I remember talking with a seasoned Western expat here, and then with a young woman who was representing the Volyn investment promotion agency, or Volynska Oblast, which used to be a real backwater. And, highly articulate, English-speaking advocate who can just reel off all the facts and figures you need to know to decide to locate in Volyn, which is right on the Polish border. So these people didn't exist in 2014, really, in any position, or 2013. They're here, they're active now.
Yeah, and then you could see things like Ukraine used to be an important place for seamstresses, tailors to sew for other designers. Yep. And now there are Ukrainian designers that are holding their own in Europe. Some of them I can't even afford. They're that good. It's a huge transformation.
But you model them very well.
Oh, thank you very much.
So yes, but the other thing that's happening because of migration and labor shortages, Ukraine can no longer afford to simply sell itself as a low-wage jurisdiction right next to the EU, which means companies need to invest more in automation, more in equipment. And in fact, so partly the IT clusters linked with industry, more legacy industry, are putting things together like warehouse automation, et cetera, because you need to optimize. You can't just rely on low-wage labor at a time when people need to be mobilized for the front. And a lot of women are out of the country still. But what I've seen this summer, and maybe I'm just because of the social media bubbles I'm in, is also people saying, I've been abroad for 3 years. I've decided I don't like it. I'm coming back. Yeah. And I'm bringing the kids. So that's probably a minority.
I was on the train with them. I was listening to their conversations. They're very excited to come back. Yeah. I'm in the same bubble, maybe. Right. Maybe we're in the same social media bubble.
But it's also, something to bear in mind for some of Ukraine's neighboring countries, European countries, is that, yes, it's all fun and good to try and win elections by torquing xenophobia towards recent arrivals, including displaced Ukrainians. But in a way, you are then helping to expel them from your labor market back into Ukraine. So bad for host country, actually good for Ukraine.
Yes.
Because there was this concern, it's still very much there, that people will get used to life abroad and say there's no going back. But that was based on the assumption that everyone would be receptive and kind and nice. Sadly, we're seeing examples of unniceness in some of those countries. And again, bad for those countries, bad for human interaction. But potentially we then might see a few more people come back than otherwise would have been the case.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely their loss. And another thing that I've noticed is that I've gone to places and you see things are being rebuilt and refurbished and growing, which I don't think a lot of people realize is actually still happening in Ukraine. And I was asking, where does the funding come from? And a lot of it actually comes from people who have left the eastern parts.
Yep.
We're not poor, brought their capital and are reinvesting in places like Lviv. And it's making a huge difference. It's changing a little bit perhaps the character.
Which annoys the locals a bit, yeah.
But yes, but when they see what the investments are and that they're also investing in the businesses and the ideas of that local population, that attitude shifts a little bit. So we're seeing a bit of a reformulation of Ukraine and Ukrainian identity with all of this.
For sure. And in fact, it's been sort of this big mix master. The war is tragic, but it's also led to, through displacement, Easterners coming to Western Ukraine, and then a lot of them staying, but also then Westerners going into the East, either as volunteers or as soldiers. So what it's doing is it's reducing the regional sense of alienation that may have existed before, just because people rarely left their home regions. Now they've basically been forced by circumstance to do that. And so it's leading also to linguistic changes. Now, part of it is, people in Lviv saying, why am I hearing so much Russian? This is terrible. But I was just walking down Pankiuska, a street you know well, and noticed there was a kiosk named Kavusia. This would never previously have been the case. It's very much a sort of a Galicianism for coffee. So it's one of these other sort of business-related transformations is there is a brand of housewares, stuff for the kitchen, sponges and wet wipes and whatever, which used to be called Myelochi Zhizhny, the sort of details of life in Russian. It's now spelled Fino, which you'd think is like, I don't know, fino in Italian, except in the ads, it's then spelled out as fino.
Nice. Yeah, it's a word we know Canadian knows really well.
Right. So these are all ways in which there's a kind of back and forth, and as I say, a reformulation happening, all of which should give us hope for the future. It's not going to be easy. The international context is not necessarily as propitious as it could be. But Ukrainians are determined to make it. And those of us who've been working with them, well, at least we should get out of their way and preferably be helpful.
I like how we're ending on this podcast because it's about hope. I have a lot of it. Sounds like you do as well. I watch the Ukrainians who've moved to Canada and see them opening all kinds of interesting businesses that are being not just accepted by other Ukrainian Canadians, but actually by others who never even understood where Ukraine was, are now really embracing Ukraine culture. And it's very dynamic and very exciting.
And winning second place in the St. John's Regatta.
I saw that.
In their category, yeah.
Yes. Newfoundland is a new destination for Ukrainians. They speak really highly of it, and the Newfoundlanders love having them there. So I think it's been great for Canada. But I think there's a few things that will keep strengthening those ties between Ukraine and Canada. One is this new law on dual citizenships, for example. I mentioned already the Canadian-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. That could be a way for bringing goods back and forth. We'll see if Minister Freeland, what she does with the inter-provincial trade, and if that leads to some changes as well. But it's a very exciting time. I think we live in a global society. The fact that Ukrainians are moving back and forth and will be moving back and forth to Ukraine and elsewhere is good. But I can also anticipate that non-Ukrainians will increasingly move into Ukraine as well to start up businesses. So this could be seen, if we can end this war, this could be seen as a very exciting time for Ukraine.
Absolutely. International mobility is where it's at. And Ukraine, that is both a candidate making progress towards EU membership, and then within the EU should be a pretty attractive place to hang out in.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me today. And I hope some really good candidates apply for this position, the business ombudsman in Ukraine. It's a very critical position, and it sounds like it's a very well-respected service that businesses appreciate both domestically and internationally. Any last words?
Fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you very much.